We've all heard about the ultra-rare Japan-only Pepsi Man game for PS1. But did you know that Coca-Cola also had its own Japanese mascot character during the 90s? In 1994, SEGA did a tie-in promotion with Coke and came out with the game Coca-Cola Kid exclusively for the SEGA Game Gear. There was even a special edition Red Game Gear bundle. Both the game and the console were only released in Japan. The packaging that it comes in is super attention-grabbing. It's obviously a cool centerpiece for any retro gaming collection. It just looks badass. The Red Game Gear itself is quite striking and somewhat reminds me of the Target Edition Game Boy Advance. I think this looks a lot cooler though. The game is an action side-scroller that's actually pretty fun for being a product tie-in game. It's better than Chester Cheetah and maybe even better than Cool Spot on Super Nintendo. He's off on an adventure dashing to save his teacher who's been kidnapped by an enemy that looks like something out of Final Fight. The plot is simple. You need to save your teacher from bad guys. You are the super cool Coca-Cola Kid riding a skateboard and collecting power-ups in the form of cans of Coke. If you're lucky, you'll stumble across a frisbee, and it's pretty fun to use on enemies. But just like with the skateboard, you lose it if you get hit. There is a special move that you can perform by pressing down on the D-pad and the attack button. It charges him up, and then you can unleash a powerful attack. It comes in handy when fighting enemies, and it's easy enough to pull off, so I like that. It's a bit hard to use with the first boss though, because he'll destroy you while you're just standing there trying to power up. What's even cooler about the controls though is that this game has wall jumping. Watch out, Batman and Ninja Gaiden, here comes Coca-Cola Kid! Like with most wall jumping mechanics, it takes a second to get used to, but once you do, it's awesome. It has intricate controls that you wouldn't expect for a commercial tie-in game like this. The enemies in this level are very random, like robot birds and boxers. Maybe they could have included something more on brand to Coca-Cola, like the polar bears! Or giant Cokes with googly eyes. Now that would have been awesome. The enemies just seem to come out of left field. What makes this kid so cool after all? Well, he rides a skateboard, obviously. I always end up falling off the skateboard pretty quickly whenever I get one. It's better than Skate or Die, but a far cry from Tony Hawk or something. Some of the stages get a bit redundant. Lots of telephone booths, storefronts, and the same couple of bad guys and backdrops. I didn't end up beating the game, but out of curiosity, I looked up the ending of the game just to see what happens. After you defeat the final boss, you save your teacher who screams out your name, Cokie, and then plows your face into her tits. Well, that's interesting. Since then, there was a limited edition Coca-Cola PSP released in 2005. I believe this was also only released in Japan. Just in case any of you were wondering, the Coca-Cola Game Gear still plays other games like any other normal Game Gear. Let's play a little Mighty Morphin Power Rangers just for the hell of it. This game also came out in 1994. I love the SNES game of the same title, which I also did a video on. In that game, it's a side-scrolling beat-em-up, but this one is a straight-up fighting game. You can choose between story mode, single player versus game, or fight someone else using a link cable. In kindergarten, I really wanted to be Kimberly for Halloween, but I was freakishly tall for my age at the time and was too tall for the Pink Ranger costume. That really sucked, but at least I can be her now. Actually, I think it might be more fun to be a putty. They wouldn't have been good characters had it not been for that zany sound they make. Too bad there aren't any good putty games. The controls are comparable to a Street Fighter game, and each ranger has their own moveset. Fighting games on older handhelds often weren't the best compared to their arcade and console counterparts. I should know. The first way I owned Street Fighter 2 was on the Game Boy. Maybe that's why I never got into that franchise. But anyway, you can tell that they at least tried here. After the basic enemies, you move on to the bosses, Goldar and King Sphinx. After that, they eventually grow into giants where you have to break out Megazord, as you'd expect. They did a good job representing everything you'd want if you were a fan of the series. With varied characters, different modes and difficulty settings to choose from, you'll like this game if you're into fighting games. I personally prefer the Super Nintendo game. So there you have it, a look at the Coca-Cola Game Gear and a dose of Power Ranger action. I hope you enjoyed the video and thank you so much for watching. Bye!